Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 376. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It's currently the 9th of April in the year 2024. I am Nathan Springer, as I said, and we're sitting here in the beautiful Twin Island Paradise Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, many aspects of this paradise seem to not be paradising as they should be because, there was some incident, and you know, when you have crime affecting children, that's kind of a bridge too far for nearly everyone. When you see that happening, and recently we saw multiple cases of parents and guardians, those in authority, those who are supposed to be trusted by the children and with the children, parents abusing their children. Was it 2 or 3 cases, and it was recorded and went viral over social media of women abusing their children? Multiple times you saw one woman stamping a child, another one the woman cussing and slapping and dragging, and lots of cruelty and wickedness. And then there was the incident today of the man who decapitated a child. That's as brutal gets. That's as brutal gets. But when you're looking at that, to me there's a difference to look at in that. Statistically, this shows us, to me, this bears out the reality of a statistic that I have read, but this seems to show it in reality. It is true statistical data they see. Infants and the elderly are more often abused by women. Okay, you're seeing a number of those cases. But among all abuse, the reality is the strength and aggression and violent capability of men makes male abuse a specially different thing. So that violence and that aggression, you could have one male abuser to 99 female abusers, and the 99 may stand a small chance of causing permanent physical damage, death, while the male, it seems nearly inevitable. And you know, these nuances in the reality, I think make for difficulty in how we deal with it. So regularly, I remember there was an advertisement. I hated the advertisement, but the advertisement ran on television here in Trinidad and Tobago for a while, where there were women after women. I am your mother, your teacher, etc., etc. And if you are being abused and you need someone you could trust, you could come to me. And the entire advertisement made it seem like if you need someone you could trust to tell about some woes you are going to, you should only go to a woman, find a woman. And it nearly seems like the men are the untrustworthy ones. And to me, I regularly see that kind of narrative being pushed when people talk about abuse and help for abuse, etc., etc., etc. And that is untrue. When you look at it from the statistical side, you see that in terms of regularity, the women are, in fact, in many cases, more regular. So, when you're sending children in which direction should be their savior's direction, you have to think about that. But nonetheless, as a man, how upset I could be that the society, the state, the government, law enforcement puts a lot more focus and effort into stopping me from being violent, stopping me from being abusive, even though us men may have less tendencies. Even if that's the case, they still should put more effort into stopping us, because when you as a man reach to that level, dealing with these things on a societal level is not easy. And sometimes when we see the horrific cases float up to the top, so we're quick to point fingers and say, well, the government, well, the authorities, well, the police, well, someone should have, and that's, and but if you think about it logically and practically and ask yourself how. Good night, Kwesi Andrews. Good night, good night. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen over there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button. It really helps the algorithm to push the content out there harder and faster. And if you're on YouTube, to hit that like button. If you have something to say, drop a comment as we go on. But it's not the children in the crime news we are specifically starting off with today. Man's son learns of his murder on social media. The son of Darren Spooky Douglas, who was killed on April 6th at the corner of Piccadilly and Besson Street, found out about his death on social media. Douglas was killed at around 3 p.m. by gunmen with assault rifles. Now listen to how this killing went down. Michelle says, well, economic/domestic pressures cause frustration in which people are more likely to lash out. That's true. Frustration does build up an increased likelihood of lashing out. I agree. But you know, the traumatologist was talking about this, and he was talking about how we are still seeing all these 19th century behaviors presently, and I believe therapy works. I believe there is something such as trauma. But I think over the last half century, we have grossly overestimated our abilities in the aiding trauma mental and therapeutic mental avenues. I don't think we are as good at it as we believe. I don't think therapists work as good and as often as many people like to make it seem. I don't think trauma is the explanation for all the ills of the world, because I don't think the world is more traumatic than it was at any point in time before. But yes, listen to how this crime went down. That was one of the very interesting things about this. 3 p.m. 3 p.m. That's broad daylight. As broad as daylight gets. 3 p.m. is the time of the day probably where the least amount of people might be asleep. Those who are sleeping late, wake up by now. Those who take the midday nap, wake up by now. 3 p.m. in the day. Broiling hot sun. Witnesses say the gunmen were dropped off by one car and picked up by another moments later after they killed Douglas in front of UCW Drag Brothers Mall. This happened mere meters away from the Besson Street police station. One car drops off riflemen. They unload a barrage of bullets into multiple people. Another car swings back, picks them up. They jump in. Both cars drive past the Besson Street police station and return to wherever they came from. Okay. Interesting. Listen, I keep watching these things. Good night, positive radiation. Michelle says town bumping that time too. People leaving work to go home, school pickup, etc. Yup. I keep watching this country and how chaotic and uncontrolled the crime goes on. And we are flirting with disaster. Look at Haiti. We could watch two directions. We could watch a country that was headed down that direction in El Salvador, and they pulled themselves back from 2,000 plus murders to a few more, literally a couple dozen. We could go that direction, or we could go like Haiti, where they went down that gang road, and right now the gangs run it. Interestingly enough, I was looking at a bit of news on Haiti, and they were talking about how the communities that are surviving in Haiti right now are communities where the residents of the community are armed. I was like, interesting. All the communities where there were not armed residents are now under the control of the gangs. The communities that just so happen to have been armed by whatever means, however they got those arms, strangely enough, some kind of strange occurrence happened where the armed communities are not under gang control. But you know, we in Trinidad, as we leap and lunge down this gangland storyline, we have a government who insists residents shouldn't be armed at all. At all. No. Those legal firearms, keep them under the tightest lock and key. While riflemen doing 2-car 1-2 tandem hits in the capital city in front of the police station. You know, a bit of gun discourse went on Twitter recently, but Twitter is a very strange place on a whole. A bit of gun discourse went on recently, and people were talking about this is so scary. How the UNC is proposing more legal firearms. Oh my goodness, this is such a scary thing. This is such a scary thing. Oh my goodness, the UNC wants guns. What are they trying to do to Trinidad and Tobago? And those people live in Piccadilly, hearing rifle shot all hours of the night. But oh no, neighbor George want to own a legal firearm. Oh my goodness, my heart. Like, the idiocy in that is astounding to me. Like, how do you logically balance this? You're hearing illegal guns nightly, but the thought of nice neighbor George accessing a legal firearm to protect himself is the thing that scares you. I have to assume that you're a criminal or a friend of a criminal. That's the only way you like that status quo. That's the only way that status quo could be a benefit to you, if you are a criminal or a friend of a criminal. Why else that sounds like a good idea to you? It's dumbfounding to me. And that hit was part of what seemed to be reprisal attacks. Port of Spain bracing for organized cartel Drizzy. Port of Spain bracing for war. Cops fear gang reprisals after 2 weekend murders. As Port of Spain police say they are bracing for an increase in gang violence in the capital city. Following the deaths of 2 men on Saturday, businesses say they are living in a constant state of fear. Police told the Express that the murders in Beetham Estate and Piccadilly Street on Saturday, which claimed the lives of Darren Douglas and Shaquille Reed, were linked. I saw they were raiding St. Paul Street sometime. I think that was today. A raid was happening on St. Paul Street. You know, I am not a police officer. I don't know the inner workings of the intelligence and all of that. All I know is the rumors and the news stories I read and the rumors I read online. And there are rumors online that the police service is in cahoots with one side of that gang war in the capital city. And I don't know. the way how the news breaks, it nearly seems like that regularly. You see some gang war break out between two groups, and when the police come to raid, they always raid one group. That seems just a wee bit suspicious to me. I don't know, maybe they have intelligence and that's the reason they move the way they do, and maybe they are moving on sound intelligence, but from the outside, something doesn't quite add up. And looking at the results, my trust isn't rested safely on the officers. The results do not tell a story that you should trust what the TTPS is doing. They know what they're doing, you know. The results don't tell that story. So, I have to wonder. And, you know, this is the thing I regularly talk about, where I say it's not that not that poverty causes crime, but vice versa, crime causes poverty. We see this over and over and over and over again. The people that are complaining a great deal about what seems to be lining up there in Port of Spain are the business owners, the Downtown Owners and Merchants Association, the business people. And if the business people don't make money, okay, you're like, whatever, they're rich anyway, they are, so they may leave. And if they leave with their business and their resources, impoverishing the place. Murdered mom pleaded for police protection. Since last year, mother of two, Crystal Haricharan, knew she was targeted for death. The attack started after she had a falling out with someone from her village. She fled her home after a firebombing attack and went into hiding. She called the St. Margaret's police station many times asking for help, her relatives said. Up to Monday, she was on the phone asking for protection. Homicide officers were called to Jarvis Street, San Fernando this morning after Haricharan was executed in the driver's seat of her car. She lived at Buru Trace Extension, Claxton B. Yes, Michelle. Yes. These stories are scary. These stories tell you why extortion works so well in Trinidad and Tobago. It tells you why businesses can be extorted so effectively in this country. Because if somebody tells you, hey, I'm going to kill you next week, Wednesday, you know. In Trinidad and Tobago, the likelihood that any law enforcement could do anything to stop it, or even to catch them after the fact, seems to be slim to none. And if you know the likelihood, Jason Hype says the PNM have the police only and taxi and PH only. They're making money on the roads, sir. They're making lots of money for the government on the roads. If you as a businessman see that a woman could be pleading for protection over a year now, and nonetheless she's murdered bright and early in the morning, murdered in her car in not the capital, but in a built-up city, and people go about their way. The killers, of course, escape. They may never be caught, very likely. If you see that as a businessman, and then someone calls you on your phone and tells you, hey, and where your family live in, and where your children go to school, pay me or somebody's going to die. In a country like Trinidad and Tobago, as a businessman, it's obvious you're going to get the feeling like payment is the only choice you have here. Embarrassing. Hoover Point leases being targeted. Businessmen in Hoover Point leases are being targeted by criminals and are living in constant fear that their families will be attacked, according to South to Couva South Member of Parliament Rudranath Indar Singh. I think it was himself, Rudy Indar Singh himself. Was it today on the political platform, quoting Ezekiel and all of them, talking about Ezekiel and this stuff. They're jumping into the pop culture heavy over on the opposition side. He said some business owners were being sent threats, photographs of their whereabouts, and private information about themselves for extortion. In addition to the firebombing, businessmen are now being sent photographs of their homes, of their houses, their children, where they go to school, of the vehicles and numbers where their wives and families are going to do shopping, and interaction with their family members. It is a known fact now that extortion is part of the landscape of Couva Point Lisas and by extension the whole of Trinidad and Tobago. A car dealership was firebombed in the district recently. Now, bear in mind, the owner of the car dealership is saying that they know nothing about why this would happen. They were not being threatened. They were not being extorted. They said nothing of the such was happening. Also to bear in mind with that is if you are being extorted and your business was just burnt down, it's not exactly in your best interest to try and go public with the extortion scheme. So the business saying they aren't being extorted isn't exactly irrefutable evidence that it's not occurring. And what the MP is saying here is many of these business owners aren't going to the police because they are afraid to go to the police. I don't know, Michelle. Because they are afraid to go to the police. So he is saying they are coming to him as the member of parliament and lodging the complaint there, hoping that he could get something done, and he is pleading on behalf of them to the police. But I don't think that he's going to get a whole lot of headway there. And it's not only him. He's not the only MP in this predicament right now. MOYHEM writes to Prime Minister over assault on road project. Shogunas East MP Vandana MOYHEM has written to the Prime Minister for assistance in dealing with crime taking place in her constituency. In a signed letter dated April 9th, MOYHEM highlighted the stoppage of work on a bridge project at Bridal Road in Kunupia as the matter she was seeking Dr. Rowley's help with. She said residents approached her after an incident at the construction site on April 7th. Interesting that the residents didn't approach the police. Or if they approached the police could have and did nothing to solve the issue. So we are basically at a point where if you have to get solution for an issue, you have to try to reach to the Prime Minister himself to get involved to do something about it. Isn't the police service supposed to be an independent, neutral body that has its own leadership and its own mandate? Interesting that they didn't go to the police. They went to their member of parliament. On April 7th, in which gunmen reportedly assaulted the project manager and demanded truck drivers deposit earth fill intended for backfilling at the site at another location. And just so you know, this is not a unique occurrence in Trinidad and Tobago. We know these things happen regularly. We know. But, like, you would think, who really running this place? Michelle, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Listen, there's something. What's the word for that? I'm forgetting the term for it. Where basically the idea is that their purpose, because when you ask who is running this place, it's not like the place is without rules. The place has very, very strict rules for a certain group of people. For me, for a middle class person living in Trinidad, there are some strict rules that if you transgress, you would pay dearly. You have to inspect your vehicle. You have to make sure your vehicle is in whatever Simon Says condition they say it has to be in. If you make the mistake and slip onto the nation's roads with something a little off, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. Property tax is swinging back and they're very serious about getting it. They're very serious about getting the property tax from you. You transgress the law and they will be down on you in a jiffy. But not on the others. It's strange. They are involved, said the late Abu Bakr. Well, you may wonder about that. You may wonder about that. Their intent on getting the firearms dealer. And you know, the nearly funny thing in how this PNM government sees protection and such is that they are always so critical about citizens who seek their own protection, but regularly use the danger of the country to milk some money on another side when they can. I remember some lawyer, a freedom of information request was made on how much money was being paid to them, and the PNM used the excuse that, well, this is a violent country. If we let it be known how much money we pay to our friend, then we would put him in danger. And I'm like, look at these wicked, cruel brutes. Oh, you know the country is dangerous now when we're asking you how much money you are sending to your friends. Let's look at this one. Gonzales, Padarat wrong for divulging info on security arrangements for TSTT acting CEO. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzales has slammed opposition MP Barry Padarat for revealing information about the security arrangements for TSTT's acting CEO, Kent Weston, during a press conference on Wednesday. He described his actions as irresponsible. He told the Power Breakfast show this morning that when it comes to security matters of this nature, while he understands the public's need for information on expenditure on the matter, he prefers to be ultra-conservative. He said what the opposition is seeking to do is to scandalize the issue for their own gains and not realize that they are putting people's lives in jeopardy. People's lives are in jeopardy because they are revealing the cost that our government is paying to protect the TSTT CEO. Superfunk says buddies in Valsane Yard no sufficient evidence, but the poor man will be locked away with or without. You know, I don't buy that narrative for that Valsane incident, because as far as I could tell from the news, the main guy in the crosshairs of the investigation is not the rich person. He married into a wealthy family that doesn't seem to have a particularly favorable view to him. So I don't actually buy that. Like how they take away the judge security and people harassing him in the grocery. Wide leather, correct. Frankie can't get security out here. Frankie can't get security. No. Don't give Frankie any security. But Kent Weston comes to temporarily stand in as the CEO. Which company is making all of this money? Why does he see the need to have this kind of protection? Yes, Michelle. Well, Michelle, you aren't in all of the lives. That's why. But they refused. The police removed the guard from one Mr. Frank C. Prasad. They removed the guards from Frank Sipasad because he didn't need it, apparently. But 49,000 a month, 49,000 a month to protect the TSTT temporary CEO. Temporary CEO. I'm looking to see a specific article in this. An article, one of these articles had it that Agard, while she was the CEO, she refused that security because in her view, the company was letting go workers because they couldn't pay them enough. So she found it unfair to receive that security. And at some point in time, I pray that people start looking at the disdain and disregard that these politicians have for them. These politicians look at you as disgusting for expecting more than 10,000 a month when they don't even blink and they say you're too fast to even try to find out why they will spend 49,000 on one man's security. One man. The hiring of bodyguards for TSTT CEOs was discontinued under the tenure of former CEO Lisa Agard. It has now been reinstated. In a telephone interview with The Express yesterday, Agard said the hiring of private bodyguards was a facility that was available to the office of the CEO, but she felt this was a wanton waste. I took the very firm view that given TSTT's financial predicament, TSTT was on the verge of bankruptcy up to 2 years ago. I took the view that having regard to the financial circumstances of TSTT, that spending within the company had to be carefully controlled and that the right tone as it relates to spending had to set right from the top of the organization, she said. And that makes sense to me. If you're in a company that is bussing, it doesn't make sense you are giving a big CEO, what's up, Neil? It doesn't make sense. You hire someone in a company, the company has no profit. How is that someone going to come in and expect to have a job like the CEO of Amazon? Like, sir, TSTT is not that kind of profitable. Fireflame bodyguards must be nice. All I does get is a speech to tell me stay vigilant. Yep. And to tell you that the police have this under control. But if the police have this under control, if the TTPS is doing their job so, why is the TSTT CEO hiring private security? To me, that's in a similar light as the government, the senior government officials who always fly out. Yeah, the internet is a bit choppy tonight. The senior government officials who always fly out for their medical checkups and medical procedures. And then they try to convince you that they are running this public health service so good, so good, so good. They are running public health in Trinidad and Tobago to the very tippy top. But they must fly out if they need some healthcare services, you know. They won't take it here. Not them and Mount. They aren't doing that. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. All right, the internet is doing what it wants apparently. Are we running now? How are we running now? Are we back in? Are we back in the dance smoothly? Number one in the world. Yeah, man. Sweet, sweet TNT. No other place I'd rather be, some say. But you're just looking at the direction it all goes. And you know, the Prime Minister recently was saying, point out who is corrupt in my administration. Who is corrupt? And right after that, an audit was released into one of the companies they started under their governance, and some very suspicious things are occurring there. I really hope that, like, my hope for most voters and with a lot of these stories is that they see the disdain that they are held with. Stop thinking that Dr. Rowley loves you personally. Stop thinking these people really care about you personally. They don't. It's not true. You are not their number one priority. You aren't probably even in their top 10,000. And they act like it. And I think you should act like it. Remember, Nathan, it's bad all over the world. Yeah, maybe. But I don't live all over the world. I live here. And we could try to make it better here. It being bad all over the world isn't an excuse to not make it better here. The late convicted Mrs. McDonald White says, hey, something desperately needs to be done on the crime situation here in Trinidad and Tobago, and the level of criminality, the level of wanton disregard the gangs roll around with. It seems obvious that there's significant upper level protection in that, and the government needs to do something drastic in order to get a hold of this. Look at El Salvador. It's not that they just sat there and the president said, well, we are working with our police, with the policia, and we are waiting and trusting the police to solve this. We are working and trusting the That's not what the El Salvador president said. If he was waiting and trusting the police to solve the crime situation, El Salvador murders might have been 5,000 by now. That seems to be our idea over here. We wait and trust the police. But we've been waiting and trusting the police, and all we get is an increasing crime rate yearly. All we get is a reinforcement, a fortification of the positions of the gangsters in Trinidad and Tobago. No way should we, like, decent countries don't have known criminals as celebrities. Decent countries don't have known criminals as celebrities. Someone who is known for being a criminal. It's not like they're suspected of crime in some other avenue, but they're known. They're a saxophonist, you know, he's a trumpeter. You know, this guy is known for football, but, you know, we're suspicious that he may be involved in other things. No. What is he known for? Well, crime. Anything else? No. He's a criminal. He's popular for being a criminal. Well, as we talk, if you're going down to the election road, I don't have any kind of belief that the PNM is going to lose. As it stands, I think the PNM is going to win again. That's what I think. The UNC is making that just about 100% certainty, I think. More specifically, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, probably. I don't think the PNM can lose as it stands right now. I just don't see how they would. All things being as it is right now, if it continues, I don't see it. I don't see it happening. Fireflame says if the PNM win is pressure, you know. Well, if the UNC win, I think it's pressure too. I don't have the kind of hope in politicians that some people seem to have. I don't have that kind of hope. I don't think if Kamala Prasad Bisesa becomes our next prime minister, that Trinidad and Tobago is going to turn out very well. I don't think so. I think I might believe that under KPB we might be worse off. I don't understand the hate to her, to be honest. I don't hate KPB. I'm sure many people, there may be some who do, but I don't hate her. I just think she's a horrible leader. And I remember 2010 to 2015 vividly. And I think many people forget. Many people have a very short memory. You can pull up the Guardian newspaper and scroll through the stories between 2010 to 2015 and read how many insane bacchanal stories broke on a daily. The lady was running a kleptocracy. And running is used loosely. And if you think crime and criminality is scary now, it was scary then too. The Solicitor General, one of the most important prosecutors or prosecutorial offices in the country, lodged a complaint with the Prime Minister about actions of her Attorney General. I'm not even finished yet, Michelle, and you're already agreeing to disagree. I'm not even finished yet. You're selling out your lean. You're selling out your lean. I haven't finished yet, and you're already disagreeing. The Solicitor General went to the Prime Minister over misdeeds of her Attorney General. Listen to the offices we're talking about here. The Solicitor General was worried about her safety because of the nature of these things. The Prime Minister took the Solicitor General's report, gave it to the suspected Attorney General for him to investigate. That Solicitor General flew out of the country and went into hiding. Is it any surprise when we saw our most popular prosecutor murdered in Port of Spain in a gangland hit? And the man held and suspected of that crime was a right-hand man in a government program with other links to attempted assassinations, overhorning scenes with DJs. I think a lot of people have very short memories. So what we're going through right now, well, no one could come to tell me that I'm saying what we're going through right now is a good thing. I sit here nightly and talk about the negatives of what we're going through right now. What we're going through right now is not good. But what I'm saying is a lot of people have a short memory. They look at things, they look back through those rose-tinted lenses and believe, ooh, back then that one was the perfect one. Listen. If you are a UNC supporter, I'm saying it now and I'm saying it in big and in bold. If you are a UNC supporter and you sit in my life thinking, this guy is a kind of UNC guy, we're going to get here. I'm not UNC and I don't like those people. I like none of them. And murder is a legal definition. They were not murdered. They were not murdered. Online shopping was cheaper till Imbert screw it up. Fact. PNM is doing things to make it harder for the citizens. I do think so, yes. I think a lot of what the PNM does make it harder for the citizens. I think they close the avenues of entrepreneurship. I think they attempt to corral people into the status quo. I do think so. Not a UNC supporter at all, saying that we are faced with lesser of evils right now. Well, the sad thing, Michelle, the sad thing about most politics is in the nature of how politics is run. We nearly always, that's nearly always the reality. It's pretty much always going to be a kind of lesser of two evils problem we're faced with. And quantifying evil becomes the issue then. We come, good night Trini, looking for you. We come to a point where we're now trying to weigh evil in baskets and attempting to see whose evil is the heavier level of evil. And listen, I am not going to go on anyone's personal scale. Your personal scale might be your personal scale for your reason. I have an aunt. She is a UNC loyalist to the bone. You cannot move that lady. And her loyalty was secured with one dream. She's an elderly woman. She lived here a while. She asked one government to help her. She asked another. The one who helped her most efficiently, she's loyal and is going to remain loyal to them. That's her scale. That's her scale. I can't fight her scale. Matt T says Kamala's admin was rife with corruption, but I had an easier time at the grocery and gas station. That might be true, Matt T. That might be true. I'm not saying this is the reality, but if it is the case, if this is the case, that one administration might thief less, but they pour out governance, while the other administration will rail thief, but because they do attempt to put their hand into every jar, things seem to run better in certain avenues. Dimple says the governments will never be for the citizens unless they are held accountable when in office. How do you hold a government accountable when in office? That's the problem right there, you know, Dimples 97. There isn't a way to hold a government accountable while they're in office. The only way you hold a government accountable when they're in office is revolution. We hit the streets and we look to overthrow our government out here. Other than that, how do you hold them accountable? Between now and when Dr. Rowley calls the election, if all of us in this room right now, all 34, 35 of us, and the 4 people over on YouTube, all of us, if all of us hate every second of Dr. Rowley's leadership, what can we do? What can we do to make sure he's held accountable? Pandey always spoke about reform unless we have constitutional change and put a recall option for government. Well, the thing is, there is a constitutional reform discussion going around the country now. You know, they're taking opinions, they're taking public opinions and what the public thinks should go into that constitution. So maybe, you know, maybe the PNM government would be looking to reform our constitution. You know, because of the nature of the PNM government, I feel like I don't want them to be the government to reform the constitution. Because I think a large part of the problem with the PNM government is they think they could real govern Trinidad. And I think that's the problem with the PNM government. They over-govern, as it were. I lean more libertarian, for those of you who know those political ideological leans, as it were. I lean more libertarian, and to me, when I look at the world over and statistics and history, etc., it seems like no government is smart enough to really run a country perfectly. And when they think they're smart enough and they attempt to get into more avenues of running that country, they actually mess up and muck up more areas. And I think that's a large part of the PNM's problem. They attempt to govern everything, and nobody is that good. And if we have a group of people who believe they are good enough to govern everything, they believe they have the God-given right and gift to lead Trinidad and Tobago, they are the only group that really knows how to do it. That's their earnest belief. What are they going to put into a constitution? Do you think they are going to decrease the power of a government, or are they going to increase the power of a government? People who think that through their skill and expertise, they could run it better. Would they decrease or increase their power? My assumption would be an increase of their power. Michelle says they took opinions about RIC and electricity going up. Listen, it ain't gone up yet. They haven't made that official announcement yet. You know, next thing, as some people really fear, what we see is they hold off all of those, the electricity, the property tax, all of those little uppercuts and short jab and thing they're looking to hit you. They hold it off. And election 2025, the day after election, and they train a little Wassa, and Wassa want to improve their water rates and put in a meter and thing in your house. Listen, if Wassa start to use metered measuring and thing, it's gonna be lit. It's gonna be lit. But you know, like, I'm wondering though, but politics is a strange thing. I mean, it might work, but like, if you are a person who would not vote for a party if they're going to do property tax and increase electricity bill, would you still vote for the PNM because they didn't do it yet? And they basically announced that they are going to do it? White Leather says, bill coming every 2 months instead of 3. We already got the electricity increase. You feel we getting an announcement? Good night, Paul Duncan. Michelle says, hey, I know Bill House. I'm in debt. I can't make more bills on my small public service dollars. Listen. And that's the thing that's so callous when I hear especially men like Mr. Coleman would speak. He is not a likable speaker. Let me don't get too detailed there. He's not a very likable speaker. And when they speak and talk about, it's just a 200 for the month and that kind of stuff, I think they are speaking from a very insulated point of view. If you are familiar with working class people, lower class, middle class, working class people, families, you know that at the end of a monthly budget, some families barely have an extra $100. That's the reality. As I said in one of the lives before in speaking about this, like, you go through this and you ask all the families, do you have the highest cable and internet package? And if they don't have the highest cable and internet package, those are people who don't want to spend an extra $200. Simple like that. You could find out if they have an extra $200 to throw away. Ask them, do you have the top cable and internet package, family? This family, your family, you are the Jones family, Joneses. Do you have the top cable and internet package? No? Well, they obviously, they don't have that extra $200 to just throw out there at any and everything. As Kervon said, the property tax in theory is okay, but honestly, where are they going to squeeze any more out of the public? As I've said before, I've said it now a number of times, I don't mind the property tax. Another, good night, Chris Scott. Parryman says, reform discussing since Hazel Manning days, only thing they agreed was vehicle tax exemption for them. Michelle, listen, Nathan, I work in this. People are suffering on the ground. My mom in local market and people not buying. I know that the amount of liquid cash left after you pay off everything that you need to pay off is not as much as it once was. And that's a scary thing for families. I know that. I am aware. So I'm genuinely concerned this government doesn't listen, and I'm honestly scared. Chris Scott says, what about the degrading of the country's GDP by the International Monetary System? Kervon says, Tobago hoteliers see occupancy down 10%. It means Trini's spending less. Fact. And yeah. I remember what I was going to say. On the idea of the property tax in and of itself, I don't disagree with it. I don't mind the idea uniquely of the property tax put by itself there. The idea that I am going to put some money towards improving and maintaining the surroundings around my house, that makes perfect sense to me. That's not a foolish thing in my book. That's not a foolish thing in my book. That makes sense. The problem here is how you spend it. As we previously pointed out, I thought that it was initially going straight to the consolidated fund because that's what I read on the news and that's what I heard. But according to the Local Government Reform Act, it's going directly to the coffers of the local corporations. The local municipalities are going to collect these taxes directly. In that case, it's even better again. Here's something I think. Here's something I think might even improve that more. And tell me what you all think about this. How about the municipalities not only collect the tax, but they set the tax too? As in, if you are in the Kuva Tabaki Talparu Corporation, that corporation sets the percentage of taxes they want to collect as property taxes. They fluctuate it. That way, to me, you're putting a lot more importance on local government elections. Well, that's what they're supposed to do, Michelle. That money is what the regional corporation would use to do their duties. And Chris Scott, the property tax is not for water. local government, your local municipality is not in charge of water. That's WASA. Your local municipality needs money to run. And the proposal they're talking about is basically using property taxes to run the local municipalities. Parliament says correct the corruption in local government. That's impossible, Parliament. That is never going to happen. Like, that's an unreasonable request. That's an unreasonable request. We need to correct the corruption in local government before we give local government any money. Or we need to correct the corruption in government before we give the government any money at all. And in that case, then the government gets no money and it all folds up. If you understand what I mean, that one is not going to happen. You see, this is the difference to me of reformers versus revolutionists and revolutionaries. If you're a reformer, you're okay with making the changes down the avenues where they are possible and reasonable, even if it's not perfection. So, okay, the local municipalities need money to run. That's a fact. As it is right now, they need money to run. They exist already and they need money. Would I want my property tax to go to Dr. Rowley in central government and hope that his finance minister releases the right amount at the right time to get my local government to come and cut the grass in the savannah, cut the grass at the side of the road and clean the drain? Wide Leather says stadium field tax collected going to borough coffers. That money going straight to central government in Port of Spain. Well, I could only assert that with evidence. And I used to say the same thing because that's the evidence I had. I was told that by chairman of a corporation, and I read that in the papers. But I read as of last week, and I read it on the live right here, the law of the land. Now, if you're saying that the government is going to break the law of the land, okay. But just bear in mind, in Trinidad and Tobago, the government doesn't have a good track record with breaking the law of the land. There are many lawyers in this country waiting on the opportunity to sue the government for breaking the law. Blessings, Brent. So, if you're saying they're going to break the law, okay. But as of the declaration of the local government reform bill, property taxes are to be collected by and left with the local municipalities. By that explanation, Nathan, we really need a law reform to help us as taxpayers. Yes. It won't be the first time they've lied, nor would it be the last. Oh, I believe you. I don't think that the government is a perfect truth tellers. I don't think so at all. But I mean, they made that local government bill. That's their brainchild. They didn't have to put that part in the bill if they didn't want to. They aren't even advertising that part of the bill. It kind of doesn't make sense. Exactly, Michelle. Thank you. Michelle says, if local municipality collect my tax and the place flooded, I would be outside with pitchforks. That's what we want. I want that. I want that local municipality to take my money. Listen, councillor, I want you to take my money, Mr. Councillor. And that way, I know where you living. And I would go to the meetings. I want to hear the yearly budget for my local corporation. I want to hear it. And I want to see how the money is spent. And you see, this is why I say even allowing them to set it. Where if I'm living in a district where we have a local municipality we trust and they are doing good work, and they want to raise the property tax even because they have intention of doing something more, I might not even mind that. because it's local. I could see where the money is spent. So that might be another proposal. Listen, PNM government, you want to get the country to stand behind you on this and to believe what you are doing is for the local government. Well, distance yourself as the central government as much as you could away from it. And I think you might get some of that. Allow the local government to set it too. That would be very interesting. And there are places in the world where where that is how it is. The local municipality sets the local property tax. That would be very interesting in Trinidad and Tobago, where you see, this isn't going to be just a UNC PNM kind of scene anymore. Because when this group gets into my local government control, they could take money from my pocket directly. So, me having a PNM party card or a UNC party card isn't going to work out for me choosing you. This is money my money we were talking about here. And to me, people have more skin in the game. That increases the accountability, in my opinion. Wonder if that applies to Tobago as well. I would think so. Tobago's local municipality is the THA, and the law says the local municipality is going to handle that. So, I suppose so. Imagine TPRC made a public proposal to build a train and we get to vote for that. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be? And to me, I think that's kind of more how countries should run. Much more localized instead of this centralized thing. Like, we shouldn't even have to hate Dr. Rowley that much. He shouldn't be as important in our lives as he is. The local people should be more important. The people who are taking care of our local roads. The roads that I drive on most frequently in my vicinity. The drains that are responsible for harboring mosquitoes or causing floods. That's local. The crime situation, in my opinion, should even be something local. Like, my opinion is these local municipalities should even handle some of the policing too. So when we have the instant, like where I read earlier tonight, Miss Mohit, what's her name? Vandana Mohit, the MP, she is Shogunas East MP, where she's complaining about criminals in Kunupe doing something that is inhibiting the work that occurs right there. If that police was local, if that was a local municipality, you don't need for Vandana to write the Prime Minister to get the Prime Minister to do something about local thugs interrupting a local project in Kunupe. If the police were basically under the employ of the local municipality, I think they would be much more strict on such things. Because they have more skin in the game. Like a community police department or watch to keep local thugs in check. I'll say a community police department, not community watch, because sometimes when they say community watch, they're talking about people who aren't really police. They're with a whistle or a phone. No, I don't want that. I want real police, men with guns who have the legal authority to arrest you, but they are controlled and viewed as local servants. Maybe even a sheriff. I've said this before. A head of the local branch that is voted for by the local people. So the sheriff of Shogunas district is Abraham. They vote for Abraham as the sheriff. They know when we vote for him as the sheriff, if a triple murder happens in the Shogunas district, we are going in front of Abraham's home and we are going to drag the answers out of him. As it stands now, triple murder, quadruple murder, drugs, anything, you could go and find Erla. You could go and ask Erla a thing. You could go and confront Erla. You walk up to Erla and one of her security detail is going to arrest you and they might beat you to a frazzle before you reach the jail. When people go in the Freeport police station or the Shoguners police station, and I'm talking central because I'm a centralian. Central men dog. Y'all ever saw that Trinidad? Wait, oh god. Central have real bad man dog. Oh, you have to look for that Central Man Trinidad anthem out there on YouTube somewhere. Classic hit. Probably about 10 years old, easy so. But yeah, I'm talking about Central because I'm a Centralian. So if someone goes to the Freeport station, they don't feel like the Freeport station has loyalty to Freeport. The Freeport station is a satellite of the TTPS. When you go to the Freeport station, you're going to the TTPS. You aren't going to the Freeport branch of police. That's what it feels like. To me, it shouldn't. To me, it shouldn't. To me, the Freeport police station should feel like the police station for the district of Freeport. You know all the areas and the holes and the haunts in Freeport. You know if a man robs somebody on the corner so and so and he run in that direction, you know which hole to go in and look for him. You know the troublemakers. Because you remember the first time you arrested him when he was 16 and you tell him stay out of trouble and you know he's more a pilferer. He don't do that violent thing, so you know where he is at. To me, that's more what you want. Michelle says, what would it take to implement this constitutional reform? I will vote for that. Yeah, it's constitutional reform. But to me, that's the job of those people in parliament. Those MPs that go up there and gaslight us and try to sell us dreams. That's their job, you know. What I am talking about here is what they should be discussing and attempting to pass laws on. Make laws and policies that make the country run better and are suited for the culture and history and society that you are dealing with. But unfortunately, that's not really what they do. We should also vote for Commissioner of Police. I don't mind it. But I think if you vote for the commissioner, they wouldn't be called commissioner anymore. Commissioner is commissioned by a commission, if I understand my word and meaning correctly. Well shared, Kuvon, well shared. You know, I really do think I might look to find myself in one of those constitutional reform consultations and throw out a few ideas. See what sticks. You know, I saw someone say in one of the meetings they think nothing is going to come of it. And you know, I get that feeling too, because regularly in Trinidad and Tobago, it seems like those consultations are just, you know, to please the public, to please the eyes, but they aren't necessarily going to take what you say seriously. That's the feeling you get. But how would we know if you don't try? All right, people. We're coming into a close there. Are there any further questions or comments on the inside before I dive out? All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll bid you adieu and have a good night. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be tomorrow at that 9:30 p.m. time. So until then, people, stay safe, stay well. It's a dangerous country out there. Look out. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This was the Mindful Live. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out. I like that idea, Coupon. I like that idea.